We are calling to order the Putney Selectboard special meeting at 5:01 on September 2nd. And are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
Great. And I just want to remind everybody, in case you haven't been to one of these before, please have your mics muted. If you would like to make a comment, you can type it into the comment section. And something I realized last time we were meeting is I'm not sure that there's a way for folks that are calling in, and I see that we have some callers, to comment. And so I'm not sure. What I would say to them is that when we open it up to the public, if you want to go ahead and unmute and let us know that you would like to make a comment, that would probably be most appropriate. So we want to be able to hear from everybody that wants to speak. So is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? I'm just going to give it a minute. Okay. Okay, then we'll dive right in. Our first item for discussion and action is the Halloween children's event status / discussion. And I know, Ruby, you sent us this letter and are here to speak to this. And I also received a letter from Amy Nelson today. I did forward it to you, Karen, and I've printed it. Okay, and I've printed it out. I don't know if we had time to get it to the rest of the select board.
I did not.
I have not seen it.
Okay, I can probably read it really quickly, but I'd like to let Ruby go first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ruby McAdoo, and I'm in Putney, just for all of the people on recording. And I've been, as you know, coordinating the Halloween and Putney events for the last few years, which were really successful. I just wanted to acknowledge, I did send you all a letter. Amy Nelson, I identified in my letter Amy Heim, but it was actually, my wires got crossed. Amy Nelson has been the person who has set up on Kimball Hill for many years and is a real kind of asset to the Halloween and Putney community. So she's the one who sent a follow-up letter that Laura will read. But the gist of it is that I really believe that no matter what, even if the pandemic spikes harder, there will be kids and families who go out on Halloween. And so I think, in my mind, somehow getting ahead of that and proactively telling people what we would really like them to do for safety's purposes. In my mind, as I kind of outlined in the letter, I still think the wisest and safest things for our kids and our families is to continue to close Kimball Hill and have a very controlled system of asking people to participate in a Halloween that doesn't look like, it's not going door to door. It looks more like a farmer's market than a Halloween door to door extravaganza. But that's my opinion, and I think that Amy kind of mirrors that. I think she thinks that sticking with Kimball Hill would make sense. She has some other great ideas about actually running, I think, Christmas lights or some kind of lights that would help to cordon people off and direct traffic a bit, but also would light up areas that for the last few years the most feedback we get is it's just dark for our little kids. So could we light it somehow? And that's a bigger endeavor than we've ever really wanted to get into, but this might be the moment to tackle it if you choose to close Kimball Hill. So I can go through what the letter said, but the basics of it are that closing Kimball Hill creates an environment of safety. Having Kimball Hill open on Halloween, there will be people a higher number of people on the hill. And even when we closed half the road the first year, the traffic went way too fast for the higher pedestrian load on the road. And so this is an effort to think about how can we continue to keep people safe and do it in a way that's kind of appropriate to the pandemic shutdowniness of the moment. And so that's the overarching thing. I preface this in the letter, and I completely want to acknowledge here that I think that any parent is going into this moment and starting the school year knowing that things change in a moment. You know, one factor starts to get worse and everything shuts down and we're back into stay-at-home orders. So I think that there's every expectation that Halloween can be canceled across the state. And there's, if stay-at-home happens, we're all staying at home and we cancel Halloween. But what I saw over the summer is a very wide range of people, of families who had differing approaches to the masking and safety guidelines that had been set out. And that's when I started to realize that if I extrapolate that to Halloween, in Halloween season, even if it's not a stay-at-home order, if we're not shut down like we were before, there will be a range of people, and there will be people who come out, even if, the majority of families think, nope, no way, not doing it. There still will be people who come out. And so getting ahead of it, making a decision and a determination, and being really pushing that information out as early as possible, I think is the wisest choice. I would be happy to field any questions or share other thoughts if I'm missing something.
So I guess my first question is, has the Vermont Department of Health considered any guidance on this?
I don't know the answer to that. I have not seen anything. I don't know if Mike or Nodder has heard anything up in
or possibly Tom.
I think that, I think that right now, with schools opening, so much energy is being put into that I think I would be rushed off if I started talking about Halloween with anyone at the Department of Health. But that's just my gut feeling.
And I guess Laura, yeah, Tom.
Toward the end of June, the second to the last week in June was the most recent update from the state. Their information and guidance does not necessarily include activities like this. However, there are a couple different things that anybody could read into and legitimately apply in some regard. The first is, as far as open air businesses and gatherings, the limit is 150 people. Again, that's geared specifically towards open air businesses and gatherings like weddings, under tents, so on and so forth. The other piece of it is the social distancing piece, which is still obviously at 6 feet.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any opinions of local school leadership on this yet? Putney Central School, the grammar school, any of the district school board?
I've been attending the school board meetings. I know Ann Beekman's here. She's on the school board. Mm-hmm. I've been in touch with her about various things in terms of the principal of PCS, and I just think that they're up to their ears, and I just don't know that I don't know that it's going to be something that they can engage with right at this moment, but maybe in the next few weeks. My sense is that one of the things that Karen and I talked about was an alternative that wouldn't involve closing Kimball Hill and would direct people to the Putney Central School field. I know that the schools are very controlling at this moment about access to their buildings. I imagine that they would probably work with us to use the fields, but as I think Amy mentioned in her letter, that time of year starts to be potentially dicey in
Mm-hmm.
terms of field maintenance, and I've always been concerned about a trunk or treat type scenario at the central school, just because it's the flow of cars versus the flow of people who are setting up. It starts to become a little bit, I don't know. It's never been something that seemed like an easy logistical management. So
Yeah.
anyway, short stories. I have not talked to her at all.
Okay. And I
And
guess my question is more geared towards their feelings on the potential of cross exposure in an event like this, when they're all working so hard right now to reduce exposure. Um,
Do we have any realistic sense of previous attendance at Halloween? I mean, I know it's big, but I don't know whether, I mean, to think that we would have any ability to control it, to maintain it at 150 or less, I think is not very realistic. So, I mean, would if it's typically 600, but I don't know whether we have any gauge of that. I guess my own personal feeling would be it puts a pretty heavy burden on the residents of Kimball Hill to have it located on Kimball Hill. Obviously, if they're not going door to door, people can just choose to stay inside. But I don't know. I'm hesitant to feel like that's something that those residents should bear, but I don't know.
that actually I was wondering if there was going to be an attempt to survey them to find out what the general feeling was. And then I also question, like during these incredibly stressful times, if two residents say, no, this is more than I can handle right now, I don't know. I'm curious if there's been any thought into doing something completely different, like, and I don't know, I haven't had a lot of time to think about this, but something like, involving the neighbors uh, in the beginning of COVID, there was this teddy bear hunt. It didn't really take off in Putney, but it took off in other areas. And so the idea of like a scavenger hunt where it could be no contact, parents are driving by in the car, kids are seeing clues or something, I don't know, solving a puzzle, and then getting some kind of prize at the end that's delivered in a no contact way. I have to say right out of the gate, I am super uncomfortable with this. And though I really want for kids to have something to do, I don't know that Halloween can be. I feel like when our school board is asking us to keep our kids home if we can, it's almost a slap in the face to them to then turn around and open and close down a public portion of town and encourage kids to do an activity outside. And I know that there's more to life than responding to COVID. And so I do want to read Amy's letter real quick because I want to honor the time she took to create this. I'm going to skip the preamble. For the past several years, I've set up a mobile station for giving out candy and entertainment in town on Halloween. Given our home is out in the woods on a dirt road, like many, it's the best way I've found to participate in the festivities. For the last 2 years, I've set up on Kimball Hill and have seen a huge improvement in safety with the road being closed. In my opinion, giving over the section of Kimball Hill between Route 5 and Sand Hill for a few hours to pedestrians, most of whom are children, to partake in the joy of Halloween far outweighs the minor inconvenience of the traffic detour. I would like to suggest the Select Board again allow the section of road be closed for those few hours for the safety of all involved. Of course, this year we have the additional burden of thinking about the pandemic and how to keep everyone safe in a different way. I suggest that closing Kimball Hill and encouraging community members to do what I have done, set up a small station, however simple or elaborate they would like to make it, will allow for trick-or-treating while also giving people space to spread out and create appropriately social distanced trick-or-treating opportunities. The space for the general store to Sand Hill is approximately 4,000 feet. If we had 100 stations set up, that would leave 20 on each side for distancing. Additionally, if the route were made a loop, one way up and one way down, families could park at PCS or in town, and we could have a more orderly stream of revelers. I believe this setup could be accomplished with a combination of cones borrowed from various agencies and plenty of twinkle lights. I'm sure we can find homes along the way to donate the use of an electrical outlet or extension cord. This measure would also provide more lighting, which is much needed in dark areas. I have heard the idea of using the PCS field is being considered. Personally, I do not believe the space is large enough to safely distance both the givers of treats and the recipients, their families. I also worry for the field, as Halloween can sometimes be a wet affair, as it was last year, and that doesn't bode well for vehicles on the grass. Halloween is such a fun time, which is something I think we all desperately need this year. Given the festivities are held outside, masked and distanced, I believe Putney can safely hold a community celebration of Halloween. And that's from Amy Nelson of Putney, Vermont. She thanks us for our time.
Laura, I wanted to reply to a few questions that came up over the last, like how many people are surveying. So Tom might be able to give some estimation also. It is a really hard thing to kind of catalog how many people attended, particularly because sometimes when your eye looks out, you're looking at the kids, but the kids have like 2 to 3 adults trailing behind them, or one adult has 2 to 3, kids, one or the other. But I would say it's not as high as 600, and Tom might have different opinions, and I would guess it's maybe closer to 3 on the highest, maybe. But it's hard because, there are people who come early and leave, and there's people that stay the whole time. And so I think it's hard to know. My sense is that, and in terms of surveying Kimball Hill, we have tried in the past to, every year we put out, we like stuff a piece of paper indoors that invites people to ask for candy, and also invites them to give opinions about, how is it, how can we make this better? How can we, how can you be participating? That's different than saying, do you want it to happen? And I think that, as is inevitable at this time, if we ask, should this happen, as in this meeting, there's going to be people who say yes and going to be people who say no. And so I think that if the kind of bar is, let's survey Kimball Hill and see what they think, I don't think it's worth doing, because I think there's definitely going to be one person on Kimball Hill for sure who says no. But the overwhelming response that, as an organizer, we got from people on Kimball Hill was that they were much happier, and they were just happy to see that there weren't, that it was safe and it was run well, and we also gave away candy, so it wasn't an enormous burden for them. There have been, I think, every year, 1 or 2 residents who, whether they had mobility issues or just were surprised by the road closing, were raised complaints. And I think that my sense, and Tom might be able to speak to it, is that Tom and his crew were able to reach out to them, accommodate them, help them get where they needed to go and have access in the way that they needed to. And in the end, I feel like any ruffled feathers were unruffled. But that's not the same as saying, should we do it? So I don't know how to survey Kimball Hill residents beyond stuffing pieces of paper in their door. And if there are other ideas, I'd be happy to help try to to do that, but we've never been able to do it. And the only other ideas and thoughts that haven't come up in the speaking, I think I've mentioned some of it in the email to you. I do think the way I envision this, if it were to happen, would be to have volunteers stationed throughout up and down and have a route and encourage people through kind of guidelines that are published way in advance around what the process would be. And one of those elements would be to ask only Putney residents to come. In prior years, I do think we had non-Putney residents. If somebody's best friend lives in Dummerston and they came, but actively ask people to only come if you're a Putney resident. And I also think that inevitably there are going to be families that don't feel comfortable coming who love Halloween, and so our numbers are going to dwindle if we were to have it anyway. Another idea that I'm hearing from Ellen Strong, who's also on the call, is we could have a system of tickets. We could, as some of the grocery stores, we could have a gatekeeper that only lets in a certain number of people and keeps track of who comes in and comes out. That's much more complex, but it's manageable. And the other two ideas, and Laura, you raised one of them that I had, would be a scavenger hunt type thing. I went on a scavenger hunt for a birthday that was it was a car scavenger hunt that was awesome. It was great. It's shorter. It's like much more contained. I could see that working. I think that in the past we've had parades also, they cause pools of people that aren't always safe. But no matter what, anytime I applied my brain to some alternative that would give the community some sense of Halloweenness, I still can't see Kimball Hill being dormant. I still see, if we say, okay, we're going to do this Halloween thing, and all of a sudden Halloween's on, and people are going door to door. So I think that if you choose not to close Kimball Hill, then I can start working on something like a scavenger hunt and work with the most core volunteers like Amy to develop it, to create stations, to do things like that. And then I think, start to push out, asking people not to come to Kimball Hill and not to Halloween door to door. And I have not seen any other communities start saying that. I anticipate many of them will just say Halloween events are canceled, but I think that's not enough. I think that if we don't want kids and families in the downtown area, we need to actively say, please don't come. And some won't listen, but most will. And so those are my thoughts on it. And I as in the past, I hear you guys about, you are in the hot spot in terms of, you have somebody on Kimball Hill who's unhappy. They're going to talk to you before they talk to me, even if I'm like, come talk to me. So I get that, but I also think that overwhelmingly, the work that we've done over the past 3 years to keep our community safer, the inconveniences and the people who are upset about those inconveniences are really a very minor part of what I hear. I hear a lot about, even if people don't have kids, about how happy they are to see our community keeping our youngest safe.
I appreciate all that. I'd like to give the select board time to ask questions, and then the public. And there's also a couple of comments in the chat.
One other place that occurs to me because of the weather-related issues to the school, and I have no idea whether this would be realistic or not, but one place we could do something where there could be a pattern, safe parking, et cetera, would be to have parking in the park and ride and then have stations along Alice Holloway Drive, both sides, then we're really not in a quote unquote residential area. I mean, obviously there's Putney Meadows, but, that would allow, it's a full road that would be easy to close. There's sides right away area that would be easy to set up stations. The only logistical problem I can really imagine with that is crossing Route 5, or if it's too much of an inconvenience for the fire department to have that number. But, we have parking for 80 plus cars down there, and we have a basically empty roadway down there. Some lighting. I don't know. I don't know whether Tom has any feeling about that, but that's a possible. That's the only other realistic alternative location I can think of. I'm again. I've already said it, but I'm pretty uncomfortable with asking people on Kimball Hill to have this in their yards in this situation. I also think before we can do anything, we really need the state to weigh in on it, because it's really not up to us. And we would have to adhere to state guidelines. We'd have to keep it to 150 or less if it fits. I don't know what the constraints around that are, but I would be really interested to hear what the state has to say about what they're thinking about Halloween occasions.
Thanks. David?
Yeah, I think my kids are grown up and gone away. Halloween was hugely important to them, so I get this, and I understand it's important to have some fun in this time when everybody's isolated. But I'm really uncomfortable endorsing anything that gets people closer than 6 feet, and could raise the risk of the virus being transmitted. So I'm uncomfortable with that. I don't. Never organized an event like this, Ruby. I can't really speak to how doable that is, how many people will come, what the logistics are, and frankly, it probably won't fall on me. So I don't really know how to comment on it other than that. I'm pretty uncomfortable.
So Ellen Strong commented that she has a couple of school-based ideas. I don't know if if Ellen wants to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, Putney Central always has done things separately from the town. Last year, the kids were not allowed to wear their costumes to school, and that was really disappointing. And one piece of feedback that we got was that the kids, besides just the candy, really want people to see their costumes. So I'm just going to be brainstorming, and maybe, Ruby, we can talk about this, but about a way for kids to kind of show off their costumes. It doesn't even have to be necessarily a parade or trick-or-treating. We talked about doing like a red carpet where people could come up and get their photos taken. Maybe we could put some pictures up. So that's just another way to address that part of the excitement, which wouldn't impinge on anyone's actual physical space on Kimball Hill, which I do think is a really strong concern.
Yeah, I love that idea. And it could be done virtually as well, like for families that are really uncomfortable going out anywhere. They could literally take the pictures in their home, and I'm sure that there could be some kind of contest to go along with that. Thanks, Ellen. Jamie Contois said, our family is going to do an egg hunt, quote unquote, at our house this year, big celebration costumes and our own little sugar fest. And I've seen something about this online. It's like, instead of doing an Easter egg hunt, you do a Halloween, quote unquote, egg hunt where you're looking for prizes. And Gail, hey, Jamie, did you want to say anything more about that? I'm going to keep going. Gail Haynes said October 31st is a Saturday, so maybe a more daytime option and not on Kimball Hill. And
Karen, her hand up, Laura.
Hi, Karen. Thank you, Josh.
Yep.
Oh,
You're muted, Karen.
Sorry, I have to look up. So Ruby, what about Forest for Learning? If you could do a day event, right, between the school and the forest?
So the problems that I see with Forest for Learning are the same reasons I have not gone to any of the swimming holes. I think there are access points that are very narrow in terms of distancing. I also think, it is convenient, as Gail said, that it's on a Saturday. We could do a daytime thing. Anything that gets anywhere close to a spooky forest, we've been really careful to de-scarify Halloween in Putney, so to help the younger kids have a good time. I guess what I'm hearing from everyone, I understand and I completely respect your reticence about it. Particularly in this time, I've really appreciated over the years the select board's support and Tom's support with closing the road. But I get it that this is not a time that you want a whole bunch of people outside your door. So my thought is to, as you mentioned, like somehow try to get the state to focus on this and see what some guidelines would be around it. But ultimately, I would think maybe switching to something like a car scavenger hunt, a car-based one, which would mean like connecting with local business owners like Harlow's, and the fire station could be one, although maybe that's not, like the co-op, and maybe Green Mountain Orchard, those types of places that have turnarounds, that have larger spaces where parking is, because what that would mean is a higher percentage of cars on the road and some traffic jamminess potentially, but ultimately it's really easy clues to direct you to one location, and then when you get there, you get either a piece of candy or another clue to go to another location, and we could have 4 to 5 locations, and in the end, kids get candy. And to me, that seems, everybody stays in their car. Potentially, we could set up at the final place. Kids could get out and have their photo taken at some station if it's good weather, and have that could be part of the show off thing. I can talk to Ellen about her ideas around that. But it's something like that for two issues. Is something like that, does something like that raise alarm bells in any way? And also, I still think that Kimball Hill will get traffic, and like foot traffic from people who don't see the concern for not trick-or-treating. And I haven't heard any statements or any thoughts around actively discouraging people from going door to door. And I don't want to make assumptions about what to or to not say, but that's what I would feel comfortable doing.
all right. I get the sense we're not going to take action on this tonight.
No.
Okay. So, Ruby, thank you for everything you do and your thoughtfulness, and it's so appreciated. And I'm sorry that this isn't a more positive conversation on, like, I really enjoyed supporting Kimball Hill being shut down in the past. But if there are other ways that we can support, please come back to us.
So what, I guess I'm not understanding. It sounds to me like you're not making a decision today. I can't see a scenario where you're going to decide to close Kimball Hill. So I feel like I'm pivoting, and I don't want to pivot and start working on something that is going to be not acceptable either. And so I get that you're moving on to other things, but is this going to be a discussion point at some further time? What?
Can I suggest
Yeah, please.
that we have a regular meeting next week anyway? Why don't we seek state input on it before next week? And if state input is totally counter to what we're thinking for some reason, then we can talk about that. But I'm guessing that won't be the case. I don't see another scenario that puts us as the select board in a position of having to make, I mean, you know, we'd obviously, if for example, you were to ask about Alice Holloway Drive, you know, we would have to weigh in on that. I'd be much more comfortable with that, but I don't know whether it's practical or whether Tom would like it. But you know, something like a drive-through, I think really doesn't really fall under our purview. That's private businesses. The only thing I would suggest is, you know, if you're going to do that, it would be important to reach out to all the businesses. You know, you pointed out several that have parking areas, et cetera. I get that. But for example, the general store might well want to participate. And how could you include businesses that, you know, maybe you have a remote location where businesses that would want to participate could, something like that. But
I think the only thing that I would see as potentially being falling under the select board purview is a statement encouraging people not to hit up Kimball Hill and not to go door to door. And that would be something that I wouldn't want, you know. I really do want to announce to the world what our plan is as early as possible, you know, by the end of September, beginning of October. And I do think that if the plan is to discourage people from going door to door, I think there's more power to that if it's something that's really both the select board and Tom are behind, rather than just some, you know, parent in town who organizes stuff. So
yeah. And the state as well, Ruby. I would definitely be interested on take on that.
Okay, well,
and I do know that other towns are taking up further restrictions within their towns, setting ordinances, and we may even look at, and I'm not saying this is a definite, but depending on the climate, as we get closer to Halloween, we may have to consider a moratorium on trick-or-treating, and that may be a thing. So I don't think we have enough information really to make any decision, except for the fact that I don't think it really lands well with any of us to shut down a road at this time for that purpose.
Okay, well, I'll be in touch with Tom and Aaron about thoughts that don't relate to closing the road, and I guess I don't know if Tom's the best person, but finding out more from the state about what their thoughts are around this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving on to the Black Lives Matter mural road painting policy.
Hey, Laura?
Yes.
Laura? Just
Yes.
one question, follow up with that. Would you like me to call this to have a discussion with the state and with the health department and find out their views?
Yeah.
And what they may be thinking that they might issue for guidance over the next couple weeks anyway?
Yeah, that would be really helpful if you would. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So now we're moving on to the Black Lives Matter mural and road painting policy. And we had started discussing this road painting policy and unfortunately didn't have our full select board. So I guess we'll dive back into that now. There were a couple of changes that needed to be made to it regarding language. I'm sorry, here it is. Oh, we needed a couple of corrections. And other than that, I'm curious where the board is at with this.
I'm comfortable with the changes that were made to the policy. I'm wondering, I had offered to help, Laura, and I am happy to help. but my capacity to do that is somewhat limited, and I'm a little nervous that I'm suddenly going to be, as you were saying last week, the one who sort of people are going to figure out how to do this, and I'm not in a position to do that. I'm happy to be logistical help, etc., but I don't have the time or capacity right now to sort of take it on. So
Okay.
I just wanted to say that.
Okay, and I will say that we had a bit of confusion over getting this to our town attorney for review, and I would really like our town attorney to have reviewed this just for language, even though this was written by attorneys and taken up by the Montpelier attorney. So my hope is that we're going to pass this tonight contingent upon our attorney's review of language.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, has Larry seen this, and how did he weigh in on it? That was my question. So
I'm comfortable making a motion that we approve sorry, I don't have it posted in front of me, the road painting.
Putney street painting policy.
Putney street painting policy contingent on approval of council.
I'll second that.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And then the plan is for the actual mural to be painted on the morning of the 13th. I sent out, oh gosh, I have them in front of me. I'm not sure if you have them in front of you. I sent out the measurements of the road. We had talked about sizing. And the sizing that I sent out to you was used by Jericho. So the gentleman that has designed this for us can resize it for us. And I just want to see where we're at on that because it will matter when it comes to ordering paint and when it comes to fundraising.
I do think that, as we talked about last week, sizing for a single lane as opposed to a double, I continue to have concerns about, we're seeing how this is unfolding in other towns across the state. And I don't want that to prevent us from taking this step, because I think it's an important step. But I do think we need to be thoughtful in how, well, I think scale might be important in how some people feel about it. And I don't know whether that affects our decision related to it, or whether we say that bigger is better. I do think that having the school included in the process really would be a healthy aspect to it. And I don't know whether I've been meaning to reach out to Herb and ask about that, and I have not done that. And I don't know whether you, possibly Laura, have had an opportunity to do that, or somebody else. But
So Ann Beekman was doing that on behalf of the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And the sizing that we were talking about, just so everyone can kind of picture it, and I have an awful picture, but I will try to share it. This is, I'm going really like high tech here. This is the horseshoe in front of the school, and that is the road, and it would stretch just beyond the horseshoe on either end, being a total of 198 feet if we went with the full Jericho size. So it would be, I believe it's 22 feet tall, and that's really helpful, right? And 198 feet long. And anybody that's driven by that horseshoe, that might give you a good mental image of what we'd be looking at. And were you able to talk with Herb or the school board about this?
I've not been able to connect with Herb. It's on the school board's permission to park there is on the school board agenda for this evening, and I can mention that we'd like to involve the school as well while I'm before the school board.
Okay. So it sounds like the school board will get involved, and we'll be able to know from them by the end of tonight what their buy-in is on it.
Are we concerned, Laura? I guess that sort of this is a specific question to you, Laura. Having seen what happened, for example, in Bennington with protesters showing up,
Mhm.
how do we imagine if that were to occur? How do we imagine handling that, or do we just assume that it'll work out the way it works out and we deal with it in the moment? I think we want to be, this is clearly a moment in time when we want to be as non-divisive as we can within town. And I'm just wondering how we give thought to that as to how to manage it in a way that's going to be as minimally confrontational.
So oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Oh, shit. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Was lost for a second there. Okay.
you're there.
So I think to involve the sheriff's department is a key aspect. You're all frozen on me, by the way, in really funny positions. So that's my comedy moment for the day.
We're here. You're frozen now.
Can I answer that too, Josh?
Laura, as long as Laura, yeah, it's fine with me, Jamie. I don't know what Laura's.
Just because I've been a part of communities that have peacekeepers who are trained in how to support people who are having a difficult time with unique perspectives who have training. And so I'd be happy to reach out to some folks who, if somebody comes and wants to be aggressive, we can have expectations about how those of us who are on the receiving end of aggression are supported and prepared to not reciprocate, and then have people who would be willing to just be present with folks who might be aggressive, so that there's people who are trained in these techniques for de-escalation. That could be alongside of, I don't know how that integrates with the sheriff's department, but in my experience, sometimes you rely more on the de-escalators than the police. And so I think Laura and I are networked into some folks. Sorry, Laura, we lost you.
Am I back?
You're back.
Kind of.
It's okay, but I am back. Okay. You're all still frozen to me in really funny positions. But yeah, I agree with Jamie, and Mike Borowicki and I had talked about this a little bit earlier today, that the Friends Meeting House might be willing to support in this, in kind of creating a human line of folks that are just standing in between any potential protesters and the people that are actually doing the work of painting. And in my experience, that's a very effective approach. And then, as Jamie talked about, having that de-escalation training, which I believe many of the folks at Friends Meeting House have. Mike, can you comment on that?
I can a little bit. This is something that has just been brought up with the clerk of the meeting to start the discussions, but certainly there's been a lot of support. The congregation has made a public statement already in a letter supporting Black Lives Matter, and this is something that's been important to many of us. And I believe that there will be support to participate in this and to witness. And one of the things that Quakers do agree on is that nonviolence is the way we want to act in the world, and hope others do too. So whatever witness we bring, we can certainly, I can assure you that it will be peaceful. And there are also other people like Gail Haynes who are experienced and demonstrating and witnessing in a way that's peaceful, and also dealing with people who have more or a different perspective than Quakers might in this area. And I don't know if Gail wants to talk a little bit about her experiences in that regard, but I don't want to put you on the spot, Gail. But this is something that is going to be under discussion. I think it's something that's going to be supported by the meeting, and we'll get back to you with details as they become available.
Okay. So I guess if we're going to shoot for that original sizing and the date of the 13th, then we will just need to act quickly on getting support and making sure that we've notified the sheriff's department. I feel like the rest of the pieces are really up to equity and inclusion to pull together, and that maybe this, I don't know how much more the select board honestly needs to be involved at this point.
I'm wondering, Laura, was there, I think I remember, and if I'm misstating this, I apologize. I think you were going to check in with equity and inclusion about the idea of downsizing a little bit. Were you able to do that? And or I may be misrecollecting that you were thinking about.
I did have conversations with a couple of folks, and they felt pretty strongly that maintaining the size was of importance. And I think the feeling is that when we start kind of rolling backwards, that has happened so many times to folks that have been, and so that they really felt pretty strongly that we need to stick to what we agreed to. But there are folks from equity and inclusion here if they want to speak to that. I'm giving space for that if anybody wants to jump in.
I'm happy to speak to it. I had to step away to make sure the kids were okay, so I didn't see the image that you showed. The only image I've seen of it showed it between the horseshoe.
It goes a little bit beyond the horseshoe, actually, on each end. If we use Jericho's footprint, it's 198 feet long.
Okay.
David, you
Laura?
couldn't really.
I'm sorry, could you hold the image up again, please?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really hard to see. But.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I can't. I did email
The yellow
it.
doesn't pick up. I have seen it, but I thought it was, So the only thought I had was just being really super clear that we could use the horseshoe to divert traffic and then do, kind of do half and half and then just to make sure that it's dry before school starts Monday morning. And then the other piece was, there was
it'll be dry in like 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, and that we have a rain date for September 13th prepared so that we can divert right from the 13th on a rain day to another date.
Yes. So the following week was our rain date. Unfortunately, that oh my gosh, I'm going to mix up my Jewish holidays.
Rosh Hashanah.
Is it? I want to say that, but okay.
Rosh Hashanah is on the 18th and 19th.
Thank you. Oh, it is on the 18th and 19th. Okay, thank you. So we really didn't want, that was the original day that we were shooting for, and did not want to do it on Rosh Hashanah if we could avoid that. So hence the 13th.
So I think, Jamie, as far as what you're saying about using the horseshoe for diversion, I don't think, given the size of the footprint that you have, that's going to work. I think that what's going to happen if we're intending not to divert traffic, or, I mean, obviously we'll have to divert traffic somewhat, but you'd really have to do sort of the top half of the lettering, i.e. the northbound lane at one time and lane at another time. So and do that sequentially, but I don't think you can use the horseshoe for a diversion. I don't think it's going to work.
No, it's not. I had a really great conversation with Brian about this, and we could use it, but it's not even worth trying. It just complicates things. So our best bet is to just, like you said, paint one side and then paint the other. And Brian has offered to train volunteers on how to direct traffic and set us up with all the cones and the signs that we need, and has talked me through what the road prep should look like so we get the best possible adhesion. And then we are going to use the same paint supply company that Brian uses, and they can deliver within 3 days of ordering. So as soon as we have this set tomorrow, I'm probably going to front the funds and order the paint just to make sure we have it on time. Just because I get nervous about stuff like that. And that's it. We're not ordering the fast dry paint. The speedy dry paint dries within like minutes, but we need to add sand. So we don't want it to dry that quickly, because adding sand will actually, that takes a bit of time and we'll end up with really goopy, nasty paint. So we're ordering the paint that dries in like 20 to 30 minutes. Oh, Keith Marks is commenting that Jewish holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody can see that. Thank you, Keith.
So the 20th sounds like it may not be a possible alternative date. One other thing I want to bring up, and I don't know how we possibly would be involved in this, but I have a sense with some of the folks in town that are not, I haven't heard, sort of vocal opposition to the idea of this sign, but I think that there's concern of questions of division. And I wonder, I would love there to be an educational opportunity to help people who don't understand what the importance of Black Lives Matter, to help understand why it's so important. And I don't know how we might imagine doing that, but I think if we're going to sort of put ourselves in a position of making a statement, we also have to take responsibility for some level of trying to bring the community together around this. And I know for those whom it makes perfect sense, but I think there is a not insignificant number of people. In fact, I'm quite confident that there's a not insignificant number of people that, as much as anything, just don't understand why this is something they should feel comfortable with. And I'm not sure how we might do that, and I'm not sure that we can have the opportunity to do that in a short period of time, i.e. before the 13th or the 20th. But I do think, and Mike, you might be able to be helpful in this, in thinking about how the community could reach out to those who are less under. And I'm not sure the language.
I get where you're going. I get where you're going.
Less informed and therefore perhaps more resistant as to what the importance is and why it should be important to all of us. And so I don't know how we might do that. Some sort of public forum at some point, or some, opening of a conversation about racial division, or some, I don't know exactly what it would look like, but I just worry about making a very important and very appropriate one-sided statement without helping those who don't fully understand that, why we would do that.
If it would be helpful.
I'm sorry. I just want to add, Josh, that's great. And the Equity and Inclusion Committee is kind of doing that. We have the book club, which is a form of educating folks, and Jamie's done a stellar job of doing outreach on that. And I think that it's important that we create a statement around this. And I think that the Equity and Inclusion Committee did come to us with a statement that we could use. and I would also add that, like, I think that this is a beginning step. There's so much more work to be done around this. And so I would
Yes.
love to see for us bringing things like the I Am Vermont 2 project to Putney. And that is, I feel, a really strong way to educate people, is to show them the Black and brown lives in Vermont and how they're impacted by microaggressions, and why I mean, I struggle to say we have to educate people as to why Black Lives matters, but I guess we did.
But
So.
yeah, no, and it's very clear to me that that's a reality, much as we might or might not want to understand that, or but it is a reality, and I think that we are at risk of excluding an important group of people in our town because of misunderstanding, and I think that's unfortunate. So, and I totally hear you that this is what equity and inclusion is about. I completely agree. I think the likelihood of certain members of that group of people that I'm talking about coming forward to participate in something like an equity and inclusion discussion is pretty limited, unless we are trying really pointedly to reach out to them specifically. And I just don't know. I don't know how we do that, but I agree with you. This is a long, ongoing process, and I think we need to be very thoughtful about people's level of understanding about its importance.
Can I make another quick? Oh, Stefan, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak? Was that you?
I did have a couple of things to say. But can you hear me and see me all right?
I can.
Oh,
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, my computer is freezing. Oh, you can't see me?
That's okay. It's my screen, not yours. Don't worry about it.
Everybody else can see me, right?
I can see you. Yeah.
Oh, anyway, sorry. I just wanted to make sure. So I have a couple things to say. Everyone knows that I'm with the president of the NAACP for this county. But for those who don't know, I see there are 15 people on here. That's my role. I think this conversation about community is interesting. And I think that the onus being put on all of us to educate the community is not necessarily the right way to go. If you can't educate yourself on why Black Lives Matter is a movement, then that sort of is on that's on you to figure that out, in my opinion. And I say that because nobody educated me on why, racists do what they do. They just do what they do, and I had to educate myself. So there's that. But more importantly, I want to point out something that was sent to me a couple days ago by community members. They were Facebook, I believe, posts that were screenshotted, I think, by our town manager, Karen. And they're interesting to me. And I want to read just one or two of them so that we can highlight them and we can actually have a conversation that is nuanced around why it's important, not only for y'all as a select board that is elected, appointed, or whatever you want to call it, elected to carry forth this task, and the onus is on you, but to highlight the unique position that you sit in. So, for example, case in point number one said, "I'm so sick of only hearing Black Lives Matter. The whole agenda is racism, and I'm not going to feel guilty for being white or stand up when the same damn thing is happening, but no one is talking about it because the color of skin does not fit the agenda being pushed. Befriend me if you wish. It's okay. I'm standing up for Cannon Hinnott," which was a young child who was murdered by a Black person with mental health issues, and that was quickly taken to jail. There are other screenshots that were sent to me, but another one was by a Sheriff D. Clark, and this was a thing that was shared, and it said, "It's not the police who need to be retained, it's the public. We have grown into mouthy, mobile phone wielding, vulgar, uncivil society with no personal responsibility and the attitude of, it's the other person's fault. You owe me. A society where children grow up with no boundaries or knowledge or concern. There are more, but I don't think that I have to say much more to make my point around why that's problematic. As for you select board members, given that this is your town manager, the reason why I want to bring up these posts is because we're having all this conversation about safety and non-divisiveness and violence. And I'm wondering, are those comments not anti-Black? Are those comments not violent? Are those comments not divisive? Is our town manager's role not to enforce HR policy and oversee the select board committee amongst a plethora of other things? And we sit here and we drudge on about this Black Lives Matter sign that we should have had painted or fixed a long time ago. And we use policy, and I'm not naming names here, because I think that Josh has tried his best to be an ally in a lot of ways. So I'm not putting onus on anyone at this moment, but this is the system that we're dealing with. It's a system of white supremacy where if you feel a certain kind of way, you can then take policy and make it a complete and utter barrier, something that feels ridiculous, exhaustive, and completely oppressive, if I'm going to be honest. Now, as a Black person, if I'm reading that, do I want to come to Putney? If I come to Putney and I see Black Lives Matter and I'm a white person, what do I think? Oh, it's a couple of people living around here that are Black or liberals or whatever. But if I'm a Black person and I see something like that, do I want to come to Putney? And then I have to come here and other people have to come here, plenty of Black and brown people who live in this community, and listen for hours on end about divisiveness. I mean, I've got a couple questions. I even wrote them down because I thought it was important to. One of them is, how can you serve as an administrator for all appointed departments, in quotations, and a human resources director with such a biased lens? Number two is, given the anti-Black and anti-young person-ness of the language that was used, how are you going to be impartial in helping us even implement policies that align with our views as Black and brown people? Because I don't see it. And another question that I have is, do you think that your views are impacting our ability to help us get through this process and get this work done? We're talking about a sign now. God forbid we talk about training or something else that is a little bit more substantial, that's a little bit more harder to talk about. So that's where I'm at today. I am appreciative of where we've come, but I'm calling out where we're going, because people in the past have been asked for resignation letters for less than something like that. I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but I'm just saying that that's where I'm at. I see you shaking your head, David. We can disagree, and that's fine. But you're not a Black person sitting here reading that from a person who is the town manager, who's supposed to be the HR director, and you don't sit on the equity committee. How can I, in good faith, give policy and recommendations to somebody who has language like that? Someone please.
Stefan, can I speak, please?
Yes, please feel free to speak. I'm not trying to cut you off in any way, but I thought it was important to bring that to the space and to say it in a way that I thought was authentic and in a way that also shows how white supremacy bias and implicit bias, might I add, and oppressive structures work their way into policy, even though it looks like something like, what do we call it? A painting policy. How can that be oppressive? Well, God, I don't know. And then we look at how people really feel, and we do know. Thank you.
Can I have a word? Laura?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So one, did I hear Stefan state that those are my words?
No, I did not necessarily state that. So those were things that you shared. And those were screenshots that were sent to me of things that you shared on your social media page. The very page that is also mixed with stuff that you talk about as town manager, which we so ironically had a forever long conversation with Laura about a long time ago.
Okay, Laura, we had this conversation, Laura, in executive session, and Stefan, I did write a statement, but all of those are not my words. So if you want to show me the screenshot, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And the thing about it is that I'm not saying they're your words. These are things that you shared. If I share a KKK sign, then those are my words. I shared them. What am I sharing them for on social media if I don't believe them? These are things that you shared. And
Hang on, I shared a picture of a child who was shot. Okay. That's what I shared. I also, my statement was, this is wrong. All lives matter, all lives matter, all lives matter. Okay.
yes, I read
And
it.
Laura, so the way I heard it is you just read all this stuff off and it sounded like I said it when I didn't, Stefan.
You
So
shared, and yes, it did say all lives matter, all lives matter, all lives matter. I read that too. It was all capitalized. You know, we sit here quietly most of the time and then get on Facebook and in all capitalized letter, all lives matter, all lives matter, all lives matter, above something that is completely divisive, and in my opinion, racially divisive, about groups like of people like me. And then when I ask you about it, the least you could have done was said, yes, I've shared these things, I thought about them, maybe I had more clarity, but to say they're not your words, I'm no one saying that you wrote them down verbatim, but you shared them and they are your words and that you shared.
I'm not sure this is the right forum for this discussion, Laura, and I don't know. I mean, you're the chair. That's up to you. But we're getting into pretty personal stuff here that I don't want to in any way disagree with the sentiment behind what Stefan is saying, and I agree with him 100% that we have a large systemic problem that we're all up against. But I don't think this is a forum for this discussion personally, and I'm not sure what the right forum is. But I'm not sure open meeting in a select board is the place for it, honestly.
I disagree with that. I think open meeting is a perfect place to bring my concerns as not only a person who's supposed to advocate for other people, but who has many members of my branch who are also people of color who live in Putney here. And we're talking about something that has every other concern under the roof has been brought here. Policies, anything we talk about has been valid. But I'm bringing to y'all right now something that actually involves our town manager. I'm not trying to attack Karen. All I'm trying to do is point out something systemic. Now, if I read something that you shared and you take it as an attack, so be it. But that has nothing to do with me and my intentions. So I do hear what you're saying. I disagree with it. I'm not attacking Karen flat out, but I am going to hold her accountable for what she says because her policies are impacting people who I'm supposed to speak up for. So that is something that I will do and I will keep on doing in other meetings here and so forth.
Yeah, no, and I think it's fair, and I don't want to disagree with you. I think getting into the nitty gritty of it and a back and forth in this setting, I don't think it's appropriate. But I think that Karen has issued a statement. We have had this discussion. You know, if we can, and it sounds like probably need to revisit it. But I'm not sure this is the place for it, especially in an unwarned, you know, I mean, this was warned for a discussion about a sign policy, not about a discussion about systemic racial division within the town. And I know I was going there as well. But I
think we need to be careful about shutting down the conversation when we're uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but I think we need to be very careful about shutting down conversation that makes us uncomfortable. And I'll be honest, I'm super uncomfortable right now. I feel for everybody involved in this moment. I'm actually shaking, and I am so incredibly sorry that people of color read any of those words, and I'm so incredibly sorry that Karen, that you posted them without understanding it. From what it sounds like to me, you posted them thinking you were posting a picture and maybe didn't understand the impact of what you were doing, but there's clearly impact here. And I don't think that just shutting this down is the right way to go. So I'm not sure how we go forward from here in a productive way. And I really challenge the use of the word appropriate, because I think we need to focus on productive.
I'm
agree with that.
to shut that down. I'm suggesting that this may not be the place for this discussion, and I hear clearly there's opposition to that opinion, and that's fine. I think that Stefan's words for me highlight the importance of reaching out to the folks in our town who are undereducated about this to help them understand. I think that to say that's on them, I get that sentiment. I understand why you have that sentiment, but I think with many people, it's unrealistic. As you accurately point out, we are part of a systemically broken system that has, sustained racism through over hundreds of years. And you're assuming that people who have been through our educational system that has been broken by systemic racism are going to be able to educate themselves about that. I think that's naive, and I don't want to speak against the reality of what we need to do here, and I don't want to put policy in the way of achieving what we need to. But I think that if we take it as a this side is right and this side is wrong approach and aren't willing to have middle ground, we're creating more of the same division that's happening all across the country. And I don't want that happening in Putney. So I would much rather figure out the right way to move forward with it than ending up with what feels very much like a personal attack in a select board meeting. I don't think that's the right place for it. And I think voicing the sentiments about it and the need to encourage education and involvement of the public and others about it is absolutely the place in the select board. But sort of pulling out one person, and I don't disagree with you, Stefan, that Karen's words, they're not Karen's words, that what Karen posted was not appropriate and sends a message that doesn't want to be sent. I am 100% confident that Karen's intent was not the same as the impact that has resulted. And I feel like we should be uncomfortable. Well, we should be having uncomfortable discussions. Having them at this much of a pointed and targeted level in this setting does not feel right to me. So again, you're the chair, Laura. It's up to you. You can make that choice, but maybe the better way to do it. If you want to have it in open session, which I'm fine with, maybe equity and inclusion invites Karen to come and we talk about this. I'm not sure Karen would choose to do that. Again, that's your choice. But I think the naivety of saying that there is a right and a wrong in this and not understanding the educational need is wrong. And I worry about it a lot for the dynamics of our town and for everyone involved. I do not want to kindle a fire of racism, of division. I want to say, how can we all work together to help improve this thoroughly broken system that we are all part of? And I feel very strongly about that. So,
okay. And you know what? That's fine. And I will also say that, and that's fine. But I would also say that I find it to be mighty ironic that we were just told that we need a plethora of educational opportunities provided to people for Black Lives Matter sign. And then we turn around and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to accept this language. Are you Black? Do you understand what it is like to be a Black person, a brown person, living in
No,
Vermont.
and I'm not
Wait,
claiming.
Josh, please don't interrupt him. Let him finish.
Let me finish my sentence. I'm not used to being cut off either, just like you're not. At the end of the day, when we have these conversations and you post something on social media and you have a position that says town manager, you take the onus for what you say, just like every other representative that's in this room and person that was appointed or elected. Painting me as the bad guy, as the big bad wolf that came and got Karen, is not something that I'm going to let happen. Do you know why? Because it's not easy for people of color to get up and say, this is what I saw. How do I feel safe? How do I go to somebody and actually feel helped in this town? So at the end of the day, I'm one of the people who was selected to do so. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to do it. And if we need to warn the meeting next time to have the conversation, then so be it. But relegating it to the equity caucus or committee so that we can have the conversation in the dark does not help anybody. It's the dark to me. It does not help anybody. And one thing that it does do is push the conversation off in a way that protects it's seemingly your friends. And it's this, and when we talk about the roles of a select board and what they're supposed to do, impartiality is one of them. I didn't say those things. I didn't share those things. So to give me a lecture about what I need to do and in my personal attacks, I didn't say. She said, I read what she posted. I didn't levy a single attack against her, and she responded. And that it is what it is. And if we need to have a conversation further than that and warn it, so be it. I'm happy to do it. But am I going to shut up about it? No. Do I want her to address it? Yes. Do I want you to say that she didn't have her intentions? You don't know what her intentions were, just like I don't. But I know this. If I ever applied to something in Putney to work and I had that as an HR manager and I read that, am I going to levy a complaint about racism? Am I going to levy a complaint about being pulled over while black or whatever else situation I'm coming from? I am not. And so I heard what you have to say. Thank you for letting me say what I have to say. I'm sure David has something to say because it looks like it, and other people. I don't want to take up too much time. But one thing I will not let happen is the voices of people of color to be silenced in a room full of white people when we're talking about something this important. And for me, I'm not nervous. I do this day in and day out. And I'm going to keep saying what I have to say, and I will continue to do so. And if there are any more statements like that put out, I will call them out for anybody. The NAACP is the kind of organization that works with anybody, and we will call anybody out as well.
Okay, I'm going to ask that everybody just takes a really deep breath for a moment. I feel a need to reset. This is important, and it's important that we address it. And though it's incredibly uncomfortable, we do have to find a way to have these very uncomfortable conversations. And when a person of color comes to us and says, I saw this.
You're breaking up, unfortunately.
Can you hear me now? I'm going to shut my camera off and hope that helps.
You're, Laura, I unfortunately can't hear you. I don't know whether.
Me? Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
About every third one. Yes.
Oh, Vermont internet. Another problem to solve. I strongly believe that we need to bring in a restorative justice practice on this, and I don't want to. I want for Stefan to have been heard in this, and we did have a conversation with Karen about these things, and I think that that's where some of Josh's language around her intentions is coming from. And I think it's really hard. I'll be very vulnerable for a moment here. We as white folks living in this system, whether or not we intend to, are complicit in racism on a regular basis, and often make mistakes where we show our unintended bias, and that we're steeped in it, and so to in order to do better, we have to have these hard conversations. And I have had moments where I have been called out and it was very uncomfortable. But the fact of the matter is, I have had moments where I behaved as a racist. And that does not make me a bad person. How I respond to it does. So it's in how we have these conversations that we move forward as a community. And I hope that we can take what Stefan brought to us here, and as a town and as individuals operating this town, do better. I don't know quite what to say beyond that, except that I will keep doing the work to try and help us do better. Stefan, are you okay with us bringing this back to the banner at this point and addressing this through equity? What are your feelings on how we need to move forward here?
I'm happy to have
I'm asking you as a person of color, and I'm also asking you as somebody that has an enormous amount of experience in addressing bias.
I think it's good to have the conversation in some sort of a public forum. Like I said, nobody came here to levy an attack. I think I would like to hear what she has to say, context around why she shared what she shared, right? I mean, these things were shared with me. I didn't go hunt and find them down, hunt them down. I'm in a position where people share things with me that are concerning to them. That's what happened. And I'm bringing it to you all as a committee. In any other form, in any other way that I would bring it. And so I'm happy to proceed in whatever way is the most beneficial for town and the people, and especially people of color, because I don't know what conversation was had in private, but I've never been able to have a conversation about anything that I want to do in private. And when I have it with people from all backgrounds around, because that's the nature of where I'm at and where I'm living. And so, yes, I do think that people of color should have their day to ask why this was said, and to hopefully figure out a way forward that is not extremely difficult for any of us. But like I said, I've said what I have to say. I'm not here to levy an attack, but I definitely will always advocate, and I will always stand up for what I think is right. And when you hold positions of power, I think it's important to remember that there are other people that do too, and that they also will come and say something if we have, if we're in the positions like I am to do so.
Can I make a comment?
I've been holding my hand up for a long time.
I'm sorry, Jamie. Everybody's frozen. I can't see who's holding their hands up. So if you want to speak, I think it's important that we give the public a bit of a opportunity. Yes, please.
Um, I wanted to share with Karen because I have really enjoyed our connection over lots of different things. That I have recognized over a number of years how I have caused harm to my Black and Brown family. I have been called out repeatedly for things that I have said. I have yelled back at Black friends and disagreed with them. And then I walk away and I read another 5 books and I realize what I did. And I have now spent 7 years since I gave birth to my son and held his little buddy, little Black baby, who was born a couple weeks later, in my arms. I realized that I didn't understand so many things until I held that little boy in my arms. And I spent the last 7 years reading things and listening to folks and yelling and recognizing that I swim in a sea of racism, that I perpetuate it, I benefit from it, and that even in my best efforts to do this work, I fall on my face pretty much on a daily basis. I've never done this kind of work where I feel like almost every time I try to do the right thing, I do the wrong thing. And it's very humbling. So I just want to name that humbleness and that painful part of this process that I've experienced. I also want to share 2 experiences, and I will be brief. They will take about 30 seconds each. I recently reached out to an investigating police officer for the Windham County Sheriff's Office and asked them about the investigation of the Black Lives Matter is racist graffiti on the road. And the personal conversation I had with that officer, I do not want to get into details, but I was shocked by what was said to me by this officer. And I honestly have felt like I have no idea at this point, because of the level of bias that the police officer shared with me, that I felt unsafe because this is a friend, but I was like, what do you do in small towns when your kids all go to school together? What do you do in small towns when you anger people, when you try to say the right thing, and then they ostracize you? What do you do in small towns where we're each other's neighbors and we know stuff about each other? How do we build community? How do we build safety amongst each other? How do we heal? And so I don't know that I understand, but I think this process that we're in right now, for me, is part of that process. And that we're compassionate with each other and that we expect more of each other, and that we're willing to be humble in our faltering and then be willing to learn. And so I also had an experience where I read that statement. I went to your Facebook page, Karen, and I read part of the post, and it said BLM is racist in the post. And I literally thought to myself when I saw that post, oh my God, which of my neighbors spray painted BLM is racist? Which of the people I love in our community has spray painted BLM is racist on our road? And what do I do about that so that my other friends with Black and brown skin feel safe in our town? So I don't know what to do with those things because this is all personal. We all know each other. Josh, I remember you were mad at me one day when we were all at Lantern Supper, and I called you later and said, let's get together and chat. Well, I perceived you were mad at me, but whatever. My point is, it's that personal. We walk by each other, we're mad at each other. David, you and I talked outside of the co-op. I heard later somebody said I accosted you at the co-op. I mean, these things, they all come home. It's how we perpetuate our systems. It's how we don't feel safe to speak up. It's how when we do speak up, we're encouraged to never do it again. So I just want to say that I'm really grateful to you, Stefan, for holding this space and being with us. And I'm grateful to each of you for holding the space to do this work together.
Thank you. Everybody is frozen right now. I cannot see anybody raising their hand if they want to speak. So, if anybody else has anything to say at this point.
Laura, this is Ellen. I would like to speak for a moment, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just
please.
want to say thank you for holding the space to talk about this. And Stefan, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I just want to address one piece, which is a small piece. But as far as the people in town or in our country or wherever that aren't aware of what Black Lives Matter is or why it's okay, why it's something we should be proud to display in our town, just want to, again, making myself vulnerable. I was one of those people not so long ago who posted on my Facebook page, all lives matter, all lives matter. And I really believed, like, I'm saying the right thing. And someone respectfully, thankfully, they were super nice about it, told me, like, hey, this is kind of problematic and you might want to. And, at some point people have to I do think in our town, and I've dealt with this with people in my family, like, they have to take some accountability for learning about why this is okay. And I feel like with the Equity Inclusion Committee, with the book club, and with the education opportunities that we've had at school, like, our community is doing a good job of making space available for people who want to learn. So one, I want to say thank you to those of you who are doing that work and who are putting the time in when it's really hard. And I also want to say, like, I expect, I hope that people will come to us, but I want to put more emphasis on the people who we aren't so much catering to. I feel like there's a lot of talk about, like, making sure everybody's comfortable, and this is not always comfortable work. And I know that I am someone who hates discomfort, and I want but that gets in the way of progress. So I would just like to say we can do parallel tracks of having the mural, continuing to say Black Lives Matter and show as a town how we value different people and different perspectives, and keep making educational opportunities available. But I don't think we should put anything on hold until everyone feels comfortable with it. Thank you.
And I don't think that's our intention. I think we fully intend on going forward with this mural. And thank you. Whew.
Something I'd like to say, Laura, if I could.
Yeah, please.
It's really simple. I am not educated in these ways, but I feel the litmus paper of this town very acutely, as so many people come through my shop. And I've lived here for 60 years, and I'm the third generation in this town. And I feel how difficult this is. And I think that the only thing that I can come up with right now that seems like a truth, and is true for all pieces of this, is I studied with a Taoist counselor for 15 years for myself to try to advance my understanding of life and how to walk in it in a way that felt like had integrity for myself. And the two things that are coming up for me in response to everything that I'm hearing is that in any given situation, the person who is more knowledgeable needs to act more knowledgeably, irregardless of their experience, irregardless of what they've been through. And the person who is more loving needs to act in a more loving manner, irregardless of their experience. And I think that those two things are the only two things that I feel like I can apply to all of this right now. If this community is going to advance, it's going to have to come from love, and it's not going to come from divisiveness, whichever side it's coming from. And we need to be one camp. not two camps. So that's what I feel in my heart.
You know what? You're not dying from the policies. So I understand what you're saying about the love and the kumbayas, my lord. But I'm telling you right now that there are policies out here that people are dying from. And people, everyday people, get up every morning with their views and their biases. And y'all can all sing kumbaya and all of that. And then the rest of us have to deal with it. And so for me to show up and tell you that what you did was not okay, that we're dealing with it, that I'm sitting here dealing with it, is fine. And if you're frustrated, that's fine, because guess what? Welcome to my world.
I'm not frustrated, I'm sad.
There anything else? Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this point? Okay. I don't necessarily feel like the best person to be the chair at this moment. So I'm really sorry if I'm not guiding this well, because this is possibly the hardest conversation I think I've ever had in my life in public. And I'm incredibly grateful for it. And I'm also, I'm grateful that we're having it, because I think this is the only way to move forward, is through conversation and in places where they probably should be taking place and aren't. And so I'm sorry that this is hard on people and that this is making people sad. And I recognize what Stefan is saying is really the pressing issue here, and why we're putting Black Lives Matter on the road. And our sadness and our discomfort are nothing in comparison to having a knee on the back of your neck. No, I'm just going to end it on that note. And I feel like we can probably close out the Black Lives Matter mural at this point. I think that we have pretty good direction on where we're going with it. And
Karen raised, Laura.
Okay, I can't see, so just jump in.
Oh, yeah, I forget. I just want to say thank you to Ellen Strong for sharing what you just shared. And Jamie, I have a lot of respect for you. And I'm confused about this whole conversation we just had. I feel like if I'm silent, I'm wrong. I made a statement on social media, and there was no malicious intent. I didn't realize the impact of that, and I apologize. And perhaps I need to be more educated, which I'm open to doing that. But I guess that's all I want to say right now. So I just appreciate the words. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I think that the bias training that we've discussed bringing to the town is probably of the utmost importance. And Karen, I want to invite you in to the book club. I think that it would be really helpful for you in understanding this. So,
Can I say something about the book club?
Yes, please.
I'm reading White Fragility, and I'm in chapter 2 because I'm supposed to be helping facilitate the conversation on September 17th. And every other line, I'm like, oh my God, this is us in Putney. Oh my God, this is us in Putney. Oh, this is happening right now. So I just have to say, White Fragility is actually a pretty good read. And I think it's super relevant for us as we wade through this stuff right now. So if you want to freak out with me and read it and then talk offline, I'm happy to do that because it's mind blowing every other word.
All right. Well, I do not believe that is the end of this. Do not believe this is the end of the discussion, but for tonight, I think we can move on. And I thank you all for coming out and talking. Our next item on the agenda is the select board training discussion.
I asked for this to be on the agenda, and I think tonight's discussion adequately highlights why we, the select board members, might want to work on our understanding and knowledge of how to address difficult issues. I have spoken with both town council and Garrett Baxter, who's senior legal counsel up at VLCT, gotten the name of an organization who might be able to help with us, and have invited others to offer names to us. But I think that I'm hopeful that my two other select board members will be willing to engage in some level of training on how to work more effectively with each other, and mostly more effectively with each other in challenging conversations. And so I don't know how either of you feel about that, but I thought it was important to bring it up in open session. It's something that we can do in executive session according to the VLCT. We can make that choice in doing a training, whether we want to do that. I think ideally, one of the things that some people realize, but not everybody realizes, that on a 3-person board, we are not allowed to talk to each other outside of meetings. And that makes having conversations about how to move forward in difficult circumstances complicated. So, I would like us to consider doing some training work, perhaps in executive session to start with, because the three of us maybe could work together on some stuff, and then perhaps following that with open session if we felt it was important, or however we want to approach it. But I am willing to follow up on trying to find somebody who isn't affiliated with any one of us to help us have some difficult conversations, if both of you are willing to partake in that.
I'm curious what brings this about. I mean, I've done the VLCT trainings 2 years in a row. I'm especially curious that you highlight this conversation as a reason for it. So, and I'm not, I won't beat around the bush. I have a feeling that this is some discomfort you've found in the way that I chair. But maybe I'm mistaken.
I don't think it's that as much as I think we are encountering very difficult, complicated issues. And I think that if we don't understand amongst the three of us how we would like to work on those issues, that makes them more difficult to work on. And again, given that we can't have those conversations amongst ourselves, I feel it would be nice to be able to have those conversations. It's not about who's chair and who's not chair. it's about how we proceed in difficult conversations, and getting some help on how to do that, I think, would be useful for us. But
I would agree with that, and I question whether it's really an issue of us having to figure out how to have difficult conversations that we're not comfortable having in public, or if it's an issue of us needing a 5-person board. It feels a little dysfunctional to have a 3-person board, honestly.
Yeah, no, that came up in one of my conversation. I believe it was with Garrett Baxter, that is a complicated thing because of the fact that we can't communicate amongst ourselves. I mean, you know, in my tenure on the select board, it hasn't been a problem. But I'm sensing that it is, in this moment anyway, feeling like an increasing problem. And I guess I would like us to be proactive about it, and whether that means having a discussion about having a 5-person board, or whether it starts with a discussion about how a 3-person board can function better together. But you and I, Laura, or I guess it's been an open session, but we've certainly talked about the 5. I'm not anti the idea of a 5-person board. I think, as we all know, it's hard to find people to sit on committees, much less boards that are invested in large time and so on. I don't know whether that's a great idea or not. I'm not opposed to it. It's a vote. I believe it's a vote of the town, but it would obviously be something that we would have to. It would either have to be petitioned by townsfolk if we were resistant to the idea. But if we want to have it on the ballot in March, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I don't know whether it's a good idea or not. I think there's pros and cons to it. I mean, I think the decision making in a 3-person board is easier because there's only 3 people involved. But does that make it as equitable for everybody who might be represented more adequately in a 5-person board? Probably not. So, I think there's pros and cons to it, and I don't know. I haven't sat on a 5-person select board, so I don't know the advantages or disadvantages of that. But again, this is something that's coming up for me now because we are having complicated conversations, and we are a 3-person board, and I feel like we could use some help with that.
I would not disagree with that. And I will say, for personal reasons, I am absolutely uncomfortable going into any kind of training sessions in private. So whatever we do, I would feel like would have to be in public. And Fletcher is sitting here and happens to have an amazing background in this. I'm curious, Fletcher, going to a 5-person board, is that something that we have to petition the town, or is that something that the select board could choose to do?
I believe it would have to go to the town meeting, whether it's because the select board puts it on the warning or because it comes up by petition. It would still have to be approved by the town meeting. Okay. But I'm not your town attorney, and you want to run it past him. But that's
no, that agrees with my understanding as well, Fletcher. I think I wasn't saying it has to be petitioned. We either decide to put it on the blanking on the proper word, but we either put it on as an article or it has to be petitioned. But one way or the other, I am almost sure that it has to go to a town vote. I don't think it's a select board decision to make on our own.
Okay. I guess I would like to explore that. And I would like to explore what it would look like to get it on, to have it as an article, and to, in tandem, open it up to people running for those 2 positions should it pass, so that it could be put into place immediately. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know the reality on that. also, historically, I am aware that you cannot change a position in the moment. So I don't know that you could have somebody running for that in the year that it was also an article. I don't know. I know that you can't have an article. Well, yeah.
I don't know about that because
Anyway.
the school board did it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Oh. Mike Morawicki, Stefan left a comment for us that he has to leave, but thanks us all for our work and time and looks forward to continuing this conversation. And Mike says a five-member board can spread the workload out, but the challenge is getting people to serve. Select board is a huge commitment of time and energy. I hear you, Mike. So, all right. I am open to the training and apologize if I feel a little bit of defensive about it. Sometimes you are very experienced, Josh, and you bring an enormous amount of institutional knowledge and just knowledge, period, to the table every time, and it can be a little intimidating. And you sometimes jump in like you're still chair, so I sometimes wonder if you feel like I'm not doing this very well.
No, and I'll. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead if you have more, or I'll
No,
comment.
I was done. That was it.
Yeah. No, I guess I sometimes, just because it's sort of instinct and practice, I jump in, and sometimes I recognize, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. There are other times where I think I do it when I feel like you maybe might want somebody to jump in, and obviously that would be me projecting, and that may not be appropriate. But I certainly am not doing it to intimidate or decrease your role as chair. I think I would have commented earlier, and I don't want to. I want to be clear that I have always, in my role on the select board, when things get overly personal, I invite that to be a discussion that does not occur in the setting of the select board. So I think that it has nothing to do with who was making comments tonight, the nature of the comments were personal, but I have had a number of instances over the years where I have asked people to discontinue a conversation because I think when it gets too personal, I don't feel that this is the place for it. And I honestly don't know. That's a question we could ask somebody else. That felt pretty personal to me. And I think I'm not sure it's where it belongs. I don't know.
I hear what you're saying, and I think that the argument against that is that it's personal is having a direct impact on so many right now, and when we hold public positions, we're held to a higher accountability, and sometimes our personal comes out and it's uncomfortable, and but I'm not sure that everybody would agree with me on this, but I also feel like sometimes through those really difficult conversations, we get to a better place. So Laura, you're going to keep pursuing. Yeah.
Laura,
Sorry.
This is Amy. I didn't know if you could see me.
I can't see anybody.
Do I have permission to say something?
Yes, and then I think we're going to move on.
I just wanted to say that I think what we did here tonight is really profound, and that if every time one of us creates a situation like what we just processed, that we can sit with each other and talk about it, because the stuff is really personal. I think it's completely relevant to town business. And so I just want to say that I think we have to keep doing this work together, because the reason I shared my story about the police, and then reading your post, Karen, was it made me have a feeling of the people in positions of power in our community think Black Lives Matter is racist. And so when I think that the investigating police and our town manager may think that, I want to be able to talk about it with each other, because it's going to impact impact us in a very personal way. So I think we just have to keep doing that work. And so I wanted to say thank you for creating this space to do that work. And thanks, Karen, for what you said.
Are there any other comments on the select board training discussion? Can you hear me?
Yes. No.
Okay, good.
But we can hear you.
Okay, good. Well, everybody's, like I said, everybody's frozen, and I had to shut my camera off because I lost connectivity for a second there. So, all right. Do we have any other business? Okay. Do we need an executive session?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Our next meeting date is September 9th, 2020 at 5:30. And the link to that can be found on the Putney Selectboard, not Putney Selectboard, I'm sorry, the Putney Town website. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Sorry, Laura, I just want one quick point of clarification. I think it's all right with you two if I explore the possibility of finding someone to help us with training. Is that correct?
Yes, but I would like it to take place in a public forum.
Okay. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
And I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Have a good night, all. Thank you.